History remembers Cleopatra in whispers and myths. A woman of beauty, a queen of scandal, the last pharaoh of Egypt. But beauty alone does not hold a throne. Power does. Strategy does. Courage does. She walked the corridors of a palace built on intrigue. She spoke the languages of her people, yet mastered the politics of empires. Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, Rome itself. She did not surrender to desire, she wielded it like a weapon. And yet, even the cleverest of rulers face a world that refuses to bend. Betrayal, war, and the unstoppable rise of Rome shadowed her every step. This is not the story of a seductress. This is the story of a queen who dared to challenge the greatest empire the world had ever seen. This is Cleopatra. In 51 BC, Cleopatra VII ascended the throne of Egypt, a land of unparalleled wealth, fertile Nile valleys, and ancient culture that had endured for millennia. Yet beneath its golden temples and bustling marketplaces, Egypt was fragile. Political rivalries and palace intrigues simmered, threatening the very foundation of the kingdom. The Mediterranean was dominated by Rome, a rising empire whose shadows stretched across the known world. Its legions were disciplined, its senators ambitious, and its appetite for influence unrelenting. Egypt, for all its riches, was a tempting prize. Within the palace walls, Cleopatra faced her first challenge, a divided court. Her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, claimed the throne alongside her, supported by powerful advisors who viewed her as an obstacle. Factions schemed in whispered corridors, alliances shifted like sand, and every decision could tip the balance from survival to exile or death. From the very first day, Cleopatra understood that ruling Egypt meant navigating a web of threats, both internal and external. Grain shipments, trade routes, foreign emissaries, and the loyalty of the military were all stakes in a high-stakes game. Survival was not guaranteed. Every word she spoke, every gesture she made, had to secure her throne and protect her people from the looming storm. Egypt's wealth and culture were treasures, but treasures alone could not defend a kingdom. Cleopatra's mission was clear: to survive, to consolidate power, and to stand against the ever-growing might of Rome, or risk seeing her homeland swallowed by the tides of empire. Unlike the Ptolemaic rulers who came before her, Cleopatra did something extraordinary. She learned the Egyptian language. In a court where Greek was the language of power and privilege, she spoke to her people in their own tongue, bridging the divide between foreign dynasty and native populace. She did not merely rule Egypt, she became its living symbol. Cleopatra embraced the culture, the religion, and the traditions of her land, presenting herself not as a foreign Greek monarch, but as the incarnation of Isis, the goddess of fertility, magic, and kingship. Through this divine association, she conveyed a powerful message that she was the protector of her people, the embodiment of their gods, and the rightful heir to the throne. Cleopatra understood a truth that few rulers grasped. Power is not just enforced through armies and wealth, it is believed. It thrives in the hearts of the people, in the loyalty of officials, and in the reverence of her subjects. Every gesture she made, from the tilt of her head to the elaborate crown she wore, carried meaning. Every symbol, every ceremonial act, every public appearance was a message designed to command respect, inspire devotion, and project authority. In her reign, politics and religion, diplomacy and symbolism were inseparable. Cleopatra's mastery of culture and perception made her not just a queen of Egypt, but a ruler whose presence alone could shape the course of empires. Cleopatra's first encounter with Julius Caesar was not a story of passion, it was a story of necessity. Egypt was fragile, her throne threatened by her younger brother Ptolemy XIII and the powerful factions within the court. Every corridor of the palace echoed with whispers of conspiracy, and every ally could just as easily become an enemy. In this precarious world, Caesar represented the ultimate instrument of power. The Roman general was not merely a conqueror. He was the dominant force of the Mediterranean, a man whose influence could decide the fate of nations. Cleopatra knew that aligning with him was not an act of love. It was a calculated gamble, a high-stakes move in a deadly game of politics. Legend tells of her dramatic entrance, rolled in a carpet, secretly smuggled into Caesar's presence. Yet beyond the theatrics lay a shrewd political strategy. She commanded attention, projected authority, and immediately positioned herself as a queen worthy of respect and alliance. Caesar was not just impressed by her beauty. He recognized her intelligence, her courage, and her political acumen. Through this alliance, Cleopatra achieved three crucial objectives. She regained her throne, neutralized her rivals, and forged a bond with the most powerful man in the known world. But every alliance carries risk. Egypt's survival now depended on the shifting tides of Roman politics, and Cleopatra had to navigate them with precision. One wrong move, one misjudged word, and the throne, and her life, could be lost. In the shadow of Caesar, Cleopatra demonstrated what she had already mastered: the art of power. She understood that true leadership is not about relying on force alone, but about foresight, strategy, and the ability to make even the most dangerous allies serve your purpose. Cleopatra was not content to simply reclaim her throne. She set out to govern Egypt with vision, intelligence, and precision. She understood that surviving the treacherous politics of the court required more than alliances. It required a stable, thriving kingdom beneath her feet. Her reign brought economic reforms aimed at sustaining Egypt's wealth. Grain shipments, the lifeblood of both her people and the Mediterranean, were carefully managed to prevent famine and maintain Egypt's political leverage. Alexandria, the jewel of her empire, flourished as a hub of learning, culture, and trade. Scholars, engineers, and diplomats from across the Mediterranean gathered in her capital, turning the city into a beacon of intellect and commerce. But Cleopatra's genius extended beyond economics and education. She used religion as a tool of governance, presenting herself as the living embodiment of the goddess Isis. Each public appearance, ritual, and symbol sent a clear message. The queen was not a distant ruler, but a protector, a divine figure who commanded loyalty and reverence. Every decree, every act of administration was a blend of pragmatism and symbolism. Taxes were collected efficiently, trade routes secured, and diplomacy carefully balanced with Rome and neighboring states. She combined intelligence, charm, and political savvy to maintain stability, all while keeping the internal factions of her court in check. Yet even with her brilliance, Cleopatra's rule was a delicate dance. The line between order and chaos was thin, and every decision carried immense consequences. In every move she made, the message was clear. Egypt was under her command, and she would ensure that its legacy and independence endured, at least for now. After the assassination of Julius Caesar, the Mediterranean was plunged into chaos. Cleopatra faced a new reality. Rome's political landscape had shifted, and the balance of power was more precarious than ever. In this turbulent world, she found an ally in Antony, a Roman general and one of the most powerful men of the age. Their meeting was not merely a union of hearts, but a calculated alliance of ambition and necessity. Together, Cleopatra and Antony envisioned a vision that challenged the dominance of Rome itself, a new Eastern empire, stretching across lands rich with wealth and strategic importance. Egypt, under Cleopatra's guidance, would serve as the foundation of this grand dream. The queen's brilliance lay not only in diplomacy, but in the subtle art of symbolism. Public appearances with Antony, their shared court ceremonies, and even the distribution of territory sent clear messages, both to Rome and to the peoples of the Eastern Mediterranean. This was a partnership of strategy, power, and perception, where every gesture was calculated to strengthen their shared dominion. Yet this alliance carried immense risks. By tying Egypt's fate to Antony, Cleopatra made a bold gamble. Rome's political rivalries were brutal, and Octavian, future Augustus, would not tolerate a competing power. Every victory was fragile, every decision could ignite war, and every moment demanded foresight and cunning. In the shadow of Antony, Cleopatra expanded her influence, cemented Egypt's place in Eastern politics, and pursued a vision that could have rewritten the balance of the ancient world. But the stage was set for a confrontation that would test both her genius and the limits of ambition. Battle of Actium unfolded, a naval clash that would mark the turning point in history. Antony's fleet, though formidable, faced strategic disadvantages, while Octavian's forces were disciplined, united, and backed by the rising tide of Roman propaganda. Cleopatra's brilliance in strategy could only stretch so far. Antony and Cleopatra's forces were divided, their supply lines stretched, and their political position precarious. The battle was not merely fought with swords and ships, but with perception, morale, and the loyalty of allies. Even the mightiest rulers are vulnerable when perception turns against them. Rome's propaganda machinery worked swiftly. Octavian portrayed Cleopatra as a foreign seductress manipulating Antony, a woman who threatened the sanctity of Rome. The narrative painted the queen not as a ruler defending her kingdom, but as a temptress undermining Roman virtue. This message would echo through history, overshadowing the political acumen and courage that Cleopatra truly possessed. The defeat at Actium was both military and symbolic. It shattered Antony's ambitions, eroded Cleopatra's alliances, and signaled the inexorable rise of Octavian. The queen's strategic gamble, bold and visionary, had met the unforgiving reality of empire. Yet even in loss, Cleopatra's story was not just one of failure. It was a testament to intelligence, audacity, and the price of challenging history itself. As the sun set on Actium, the queen's world began to crumble, and the fate of Egypt hung in the balance, poised between subjugation and survival. As the walls of Alexandria trembled under the approaching forces of Octavian, Cleopatra faced a choice few rulers ever must: surrender and live under humiliation, or die and control her own destiny. The queen, who had navigated the treacherous currents of palace intrigue, diplomacy, and empire, chose the path that only she could define. Her death was not defeat, it was a final act of sovereignty. Cleopatra sealed her fate, preserving her dignity and the dignity of Egypt, refusing to allow Rome the ultimate triumph. In those final moments, she transformed from a ruler to a legend, from history to myth. The world would remember her not just as a queen, but as a force of intelligence, courage, and audacity. She had wielded power in ways that few could understand, challenging the might of Rome and shaping the course of history with every calculated move. Cleopatra's legacy endured, not in the stories written by her enemies, but in the timeless lessons of ambition, strategy, and resilience. Egypt would fall, the Ptolemaic dynasty would end, and Rome would rise. But Cleopatra's story, her vision, and her defiance of the impossible would echo through millennia. She was more than myth, more than legend. She was the queen who dared to challenge empires, who understood that power is as much about perception as it is about force. And in the end, her final act whispered across time, "The greatest power is the power to define your own destiny, even in the face of inevitable defeat."